Street Corners, your neighborhood. Street Corners, where life is good. When you want to know what's happening and keep up with the times, come be a part of Street Corners Life.
Hey, this is Rico Figliolini, host of Street Corners Life. I appreciate you joining me tonight. This is going to be a quick what's happening in Street Corners this week. The main thing that's going on is tonight's meeting at the Peachtree Corners Baptist Church that had to deal with the Marta referendum, specifically the transit hub is the way it was advertised. And it was hosted by County Commissioner, Board of Director Charlotte Nash, who came out to speak to probably close to 100 people. She's the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners chairperson. And she came to discuss that some of the discrepancies that have been out, and certainly that has been out, and certainly probably because of what was in the plan, and in specific one map that showed a circle and a suggested what looked like a suggested transit hub smack in the middle of Peachtree Corners Circle and West Jones Bridge Road. That's the intersection of where you find the YMCA, the Robert Fowler YMCA, the Peachtree Corners Baptist Church, and the Cornerstone Christian Academy. Of course, when people saw that, they became concerned, to say the least. There was a lot of talk on Nextdoor, which is the community app that has several thousands, and maybe almost 8,000 homes represented from the surrounding areas on that app, and there's been discussion on there about what that meant. So the meeting tonight was to discuss that, and Nash came out and with quite a few presentations there, PowerPoint presentation as well as displays of the type of transit hub and what that entails actually. But the biggest thing, and just to put it up front, because this is the biggest thing that came out of it, is that the circle that was on this map, and it wasn't a huge circle, it was a small circle concentric to that intersection pretty much, that is not where a transit hub would be put. That was made very clear by Charlotte Nash. That is not a place that a transit hub would be put. However, Holcomb Bridge Road or 141 in Peachtree Corner Circle or 141 would be a place that a transit hub could be put. And so there, let me give you a brief idea of some of the things that were discussed and went on. I'll start from the beginning, so I'll try to keep this short and not run through all my notes on this. But Charlotte Nash discussed first talking about the population growth that Gwinnett County will see over the next few years, over the next decade, of almost 600,000 people coming to the county, or growth in the county, of Savannah's port developing more, and by that, a byproduct of that, a lot more trucks coming into Gwinnett County as a major hub for deliveries of these trucks running through Gwinnett County through 85 and 75 and such. So that was discussed. It was discussed a bit about that growth, and that if we're going to have that growth, that we need transportation that makes sense, that's planned now, as opposed to later when it has to be worked on and further out, because obviously these plans do take time. It's not as if this stuff happens tomorrow. Even the hard rail plan would take 10 to 15 years, or 12 to 15 years to complete, and that would be going to Jimmy Carter and 85. So it's Jimmy Carter Boulevard and 85. Then an extension of Doraville's hard rail system would go up there, and that's the only hard rail station proposed at this point in the plans. It is a breakthrough perimeter, and it is and that is a big thing, breaking through the perimeter, coming into Gwinnett County that way. But so that was discussed. It was also discussed at the beginning about the outreach that was done, the process, the surveys, the scientific surveys and phone calls, the focus groups, all the things that went into culling and pulling together information about what was needed. And that's how these plans happen, right? They don't come out of nowhere. There's lots of research that's done on it because you do want to find out what the community wants. You want to find out what the community needs, because sometimes needs are different than wants. And with this growth, we need certain things. The community may not want it, or the existing community, but there are needs that have to be met, and they have to be looked at because they take a long time to happen and implement. So the top three things that the research showed was that Gwinnettians want better connections in Gwinnett County, and that they want better connections to Atlanta. Plus, they want more frequency of buses, more frequency of transit. Because right now, as it stands, you could be taking an hour to get somewhere that with a car you might take obviously less time. It seems. So, part of that research came up with these top three things of what Gwinnettians would want. Now, how is this going to be funded? It's a 1 penny sales tax. That's the major funding of it. Gwinnett County gets the tax dollars directly from the state. It does not go to MARTA. And they get all the reporting and all the oversight, Gwinnett County, our government. And then the money's paid out to MARTA. And over a 6-year period, they will get 29% each year of that budget that comes in from sales tax. There's also funding that might come in through federal matching dollars, but they're not quite counting on that because from long-term experience, according to Nash at tonight's meeting, that's never quite where it's supposed to be. So they're not really counting on that aspect of it. What other controls are there? Well, Gwinnett County will have the ability to audit MARTA and to approve anything that comes into Gwinnett County. They are essentially, MARTA will be a contractor managing the transit system for the next 3 to 6 years at our behest, because they have the experience and they are getting better. They, of course, the thing that goes around is that there might be corruption, that there's been corruption, and and of course some people have been known to say that's what's going to be happening here. But Gwinnett County has the ability to do several things. They will control the money. They have the ability to demand an audit, and they also have the ability to say no on certain things. Unless, of course, MARTA wants to come in with their own money and then do something and build on their own, but they're not going to do that. They're going to want the funds that Gwinnett County actually controls. This is actually one of the best deals I've seen in this type of situation. But just to go back to what we were discussing, and I'm just going in the order of the meeting, we were talking about heavy rail coming from Doraville to Jimmy Carter Boulevard. The idea is to make it easy to change from one mode of travel to another, and that if that transit area, eventually that's the first stop in Gwinnett County, and it would be extended over the next 20, 30, 40 years. This is not a short-term project. And the idea is to set stations maybe every 5 miles or so, where it's required. As well, now that's just one hard rail system as far as this total budget. The other items would be BRT, where three routes that are meant to about 50 miles of travel with dedicated spaces. That will be part of the plan. Express and local buses, a huge expansion of that with weekend services, extended hours, and more frequency. Coming from Brooklyn, I would stand on the street corner. Of course, the population was denser there maybe, but I would stand on the street corner and every 15 minutes a bus would come by. There was no such thing as waiting an hour for a bus. No one wants to wait an hour for a bus. That's why few people ride the bus system. You have to build the frequency so then there's more people that would be willing to commit to riding the bus to get to the MARTA station, to be able to get the train to where they want to go. So sometimes you have to build that up, and it takes time to do that. So that's also part of that. There's also the flex service that she talked about, which is demand services to fill in the gaps of travel in the less populated areas. There's also Paratransit, which is door-to-door for people that have mobility issues, and it would be within 3/4 of a mile of a transit or station stop. So if you have certain challenges, physical challenges and such, and you need that, you can call up and you can be brought right to the transit place. You don't have to worry. It's like an Uber or a Lyft, essentially, or a minivan. They also talked about 3 direct connect services to multimodal hubs. These are places that within the county that would where people would be able to go to and change their mode of transportation. That's the hub process. And she also brought out that the county has AAA bond rating, which quite frankly, some of the other counties don't have that around here, and that will give us a better rating on if we were to take any bonds, but that's not even in the cards. She also pointed out the HB 930, House Bill 930, where Gwinnett County can also use that Gwinnett County that to cover the debt, that the funds from the Marta referendum cannot be used to cover any debt outside of the county work. So Marta can't go and cover any capital debt that's happening in Fulton County, for example. That's not what the money's for. The 29% the first 6 years is for operating, essentially operations funding and capital debt that might be incurred within Gwinnett County. So that was that. Gwinnett County makes decisions on the level of services. So if we want a higher level of service, if we want certain things that elevates that level of service, we can do that. Of course, we have to pay for it, and that comes out of the budget again. But we have control over that aspect of it. She pointed out that the plan is supposed to anticipate and be proactive. So the plan is a live plan. It's not it's as defined as you can get for the time being, but the plan can be updated, and the whole idea is that you want to be proactive in updating the plan as well. So there is an existing plan. You could go online to find that at Gwinnett County. You could go online. I think I have that in 1 or 2 of our posts on livingandpeachtreecorners.com. You can find it there as well. Going through, Gwinnett needs to approve capital projects. That's what I mentioned before, that any capital projects that happen in Gwinnett County for transit or Marta, any stops have to be approved by the county. Of course, the question was brought up, well, can Marta do what they want? Of course they can. They can come and build it themselves, but they're not going to do it without the funding that's agreed by Gwinnett County. That's not what they're going to do. Gwinnett County also has the right to review designs and to hire our own engineers to measure the value of the project. In essence, to bring the best value to the project, meaning that if we feel that we could get more out of the project for that money, then that's what we would demand. She also talked about major corridors being 141 and Holcomb Bridge Road, and that Marta will be, because of the hub where the original discussion came from, will be notified officially that that's not an acceptable point for the location of a transit hub. What else? Let's continue on. What is a hub? Describe it. Well, it's supposed to be only 1 to 2 acres, these facilities, and it's a place to have a mode of change of transportation. Originally they said it wouldn't have a parking deck, but at one point they talked about you can park, get out of your car, and then go take a transit. Well, if you're going to park and get out of the car and take a bus or some sort of transit, the car has to be left somewhere. So I don't know, it's either a parking lot or a deck, but it has to be left somewhere, I would imagine. City Council person Eric Christ, post 2, was there because the hub that was talked about is in this district and in his district. And so he was fielding the questions and actually gave the questions and asked for clarifications. These were written questions from the audience, and also the audience got a chance to ask their own questions. But Eric Christ, city councilman there, was took control of the meeting at the point where Charlotte Nash completed her presentation, asked these questions, asked for clarifications on some of the answers that came across. Also, the mayor was there, several other council people, Phil Sod, Ware Gradwick, I believe, and I'm sure I'm missing a few people, but but I wasn't. They're all there, I'm sure. What else was she talking about? Technology changes already showing up. So that's why this living and breathing plan is supposed to be updated every so often in a proactive way, because technology is changing. It's changing now. The way we do transportation is changing. How it's being done is changing. Part of what we have to do, part of what the plan has to do, is to finalize and identify the corridors. So it's to some degree identified them, but further work will be done as things come up. The idea is that it's supposed to be flexible, this plan. It's supposed to allow the ability to move and adjust certain things. So, for example, and not everything is overnight. Like I mentioned, the hard rail part going to Jimmy Carter and 85 will take 12 to 15 years. There's a lot of building, a lot of legal, a lot of right-of-way, a lot of science and engineering that has to go into this. It's not something done overnight. It certainly costs a lot of money to get it there. So there's that. She talked about Eric brought up the 75 bus fleet of Gwinnett County versus the 500 plus bus fleet of Marta, and how that would have to, how they would have to engage, where buses stop, other buses pick up. That whole aspect of how that's going to work is why Marta is being brought into this, so this way they can manage that whole process, right? We talked about the type of fuel and sustainability. Charlotte Nash brought up that there are mixed sources of fuel. They may very well be electric vehicles because electric is coming in use like this. You can see that with Tesla and other cars along those lines. So electric vehicles, natural gas, clean, if there is such thing as clean diesel, or at least the way it's being handled. So there's that as well. So the flexibility of these things are able to be taken care of through updating of the plan. The only thing that's not flexible, she pointed out, was the stake in the ground, and that's essentially the hard rail. That doesn't change. That will be where it's going to go, it seems. She also talked about the BRT, which is the, if you will, the light rail, or the bus on the light rail on rubber, if you will, in dedicated lanes. That those can also evolve to be dedicated autonomous vehicle lanes eventually, as the years go on, where you might see that, or you might see light rail coming through there. Technology and human behavior change, and who knows what's going to happen over the next decade or two. Question was put out about why a sales tax? Why not do it through general funds or other things? I don't think we would want to do a bond rating, a bond venture on this. It makes sense to me. We've done the SPLOST. It's an experience that we've had where we've built the Gwinnett County Park system through using SPLOST, where we've built schools using funds like that. And we get a substantial amount, a decent amount of SPLOST money for sidewalks and road improvements and such, also from the current SPLOST. But the idea is to do the 1 penny, to be able to cover the operations of the system. So there's that. Why hire Marta and not someone else? Well, 200,000 from outside of Gwinnett work in Gwinnett County. Where are they coming from? Probably from, and no doubt from inside the perimeter and other counties that have the Marta system working or will be working in them. And how are they going to connect to our county? Well, that's the idea. If there's 200,000 people from outside Gwinnett working in Gwinnett, we have to be able to provide that interchange of transportation, right? And that's only going to grow. By state law, the sole provider of heavy rail is Marta. So that is another reason that if we're extending the Marta system, that's another reason that they have to be part of this. County has the power of the purse, as mentioned before, so any changes that have to be made can be forced onto Marta by the fact of Gwinnett County holding that purse. It's not a done deal, folks. This work that's being done right now over the last few weeks and all the early voting and the voting that's happening March 19th. Fairly simple. It is not a done deal. This has to be voted on, and if it does not pass, this is what the Marta referendum is. And this is why there's a plan out there, because we have to vote on something, and that plan was put together so people could see what we're voting on. So the question is whether you want to see it, whether you want Marta, whether you want this referendum passed. You have to be able to vote for it, for or against. March 19th is the date. It's a regular polling place. People have been voting, hundreds of people have been voting ahead of time on this, and there will be more voting on the 19th, I'm sure. It is the only thing on the ballot within our voting district. Now, some other cities and such have, within the county, have other things on their ballot that's being voted on, and so that's different. But in our city here, the only thing on the ballot is this referendum. So essentially what it comes down to is you have to decide individually whether this is something you want or not. There are people that adamantly don't want this. I've seen it on my Facebook page, Peace Recorders Life. I've seen it on Nextdoor in discussion groups and in threads. And I saw it at tonight's meeting. There were over 100 people there, I believe. And although towards the end, I think people were those people that became to understand that the transit hub of where it looked like it was going to be on the map is not there. So that sort of diffused everything at that point, I believe. Of course, there's still people that don't want this passed because of Marta being a corrupt. I think it's more because of Marta being corrupt and having that corrupt issue about them than it is maybe having the system come in. I think people understand we need to expand the transit system, and they probably would have liked it if Gwinnett County was the one doing it. As far as the hard rail, I really don't get a sense of whether people don't want it or not in the county. It's more whether they would want Marta doing it or not. Obviously, as a growing metropolis that has to plan 10, 20, 30, 40 years out, because really, it takes a long time to get these things out there, and we're continuously growing. The population here is not going to get any smaller. It's only going to get larger. So it would be foolhardy for anyone to think that we should stop what we're doing and not plan these things out. So it's just really a matter of where you see your priorities. Should it come down on party lines? That's kind of silly, and this is not even a party issue, really. This is more of an issue whether we want mass transit to expand properly in Gwinnett County. And I think having the controls on it makes a lot of sense. This is the best deal I've seen over the last, at least I've researched over the last 3 times that this has been voted on or brought up. So, folks, you just have to make your own mind up. You have to decide what's good for you and what you think is good for this county. So I'll leave it at that. I thought it was a great presentation. I thought there was a lot of great questions. I think it was all answered well. I thank Charlotte Nash for making the choice to come out to the city, for the mayor to be there, for the other city council, for Eric Chris for taking over some of the emceeing of the questions and asking for pointed answers on certain things. I think he did a good job, and glad that it was hosted by Peace Recorders Baptist Church, which is right at the intersection of where all this misery and problems started because of that map location. So that's that. Look for Peachtree Corners magazine. I'm the publisher and owner of that magazine, not the city. That's been also something that people had thought was the city owned, but it is a privately held magazine. I am the publisher. I'm hoping you enjoy it. It's being mailed to every household in the city of Peachtree Corners, and I believe that I've gotten great response. If you think there should be any improvements, if you have any idea of what I can improve upon, please certainly let me know. 17,000 households are getting this. 80 locations are getting it. Next issue will be out the beginning of April. We have some really good stuff planned, including a whole article about the market area and the market values, both residential and commercial, in the city. We have some information on a couple of fun articles on one person planning his Appalachian Trail, his 22,000-mile trek. And we have an article on pet rescue and another piece on sweets and treats that I'm doing with my daughter, Kinsey Figliolini, as she did with me one weekend on the cocktails in that first issue. Plus, a lot of other things is going to be in there. So we hope you enjoy it. And if you have any news you want to send that way, please send it to editor@livinginpeachtreecorners.com. Sign up for our newsletter at livinginpeachtreecorners.com. Like our Facebook page at Peachtree Corners Life. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And that's it. Have a good evening. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita. Check out our Facebook page, download the Spreaker radio app for Apple, Android, and Windows devices, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at peachtreecornerslive.com.